Hey everybody, welcome to our pre-recorded webinar. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about the endocannabinoid system, about the entourage effect, about some incredible plants that work in the ECS. And I'm very lucky to be joined today with Arjun, who is from Good Herb Soda. So he'll be talking to us throughout today and throughout the session, and also presenting on terpenes. So for those that don't know me, my name's Dr. Corin Storgy from Soleno Health. I'm a medical researcher with a PhD specializing in medicinal chemistry. And I run a company called Soleno Health and the Maca Experts as well, with my partner Sally, who is a native Peruvian. We're a New Zealand-based company out of Wellington. We do a lot of online education, particularly around cannabinoid plants and regulators. So the ECS, it's often called, standing for endocannabinoid system, is the system that controls all other systems. So we like to think of the ECS as the master system that has the ability to tune and finely tune all the other different bodily systems, particularly the hormonal and endocrine system. So this system was discovered back in the 1990s using cannabis, hence it's named after cannabis, being called the endo, meaning internal, and cannabinoid, from the word cannabis, system. They discovered different receptor types called CB1 and CB2, so it stands for cannabinoid 1 and 2. And these receptors would respond to human-made cannabinoids, and they had the ability to tweak and, like I said, and to bring balance back to the cells and systems around them. So we now know that there are cannabinoid receptors in the brain, in the lungs, in the vascular system, in the liver cells. We have seen CB2 receptors on immune cells, part of the immune function response, our muscles, and pretty much all of our tissue.
Yeah, it's actually, Corin, there's just an interesting fact about how this was researched in the 1990s. It was
Mm-hmm.
there was this Dr. Rafael Mechoulam in Israel, and he discovered THC first, uh, and then he was studying THC and how that interacted with the body, and that's how he came around with the endocannabinoid system. He figured that out.
It was THC initially that was the key molecule that they found that would ignite. It was a CB1 agonist, so it would ignite these receptors, and they were able to identify and characterize the structure of the receptor. But from there, the research has just gone on and on and on. And I mean, it's pretty exciting research that's been happening over the last 20 to 30 years as they've begun to understand the significance of this system. So what I'm going to do is explain how the ECS works. And we're going to do that by zooming in and a section of the brain. Yep. So what I've got for you guys here is a picture of two neurons. When messages travel in the body, they work their way down through neurons, and they have to cross gaps between neurons. So these gaps we call synapses. So we have a pre-synaptic and post-synaptic neuron, so before and after the gap. Now, messages are carried across these synapse gaps via neurotransmitters. And the main one that we know of that plays this role is serotonin, hopefully, that we've all heard of, but there's other ones as well, like dopamine, for example. And when they bind that post-synaptic neuron, that message will continue down. But what they discovered through isolating out and characterizing these CB1 receptors is that as this process is happening in our nervous system, we're actually producing human cannabinoids on the other side of the synapse in response to this flow of serotonin or neurotransmitters. And the key molecule that is found to be produced was a human cannabinoid called anandamide, or AEA. So the word anandamide, actually, ananda itself comes from Sanskrit. Do you know what the have you done yoga before? Have you ever heard the word Ananda?
Yeah, it's Anand. There's lots of Indian dudes with the name Anand as well. Like
Yeah,
it's a common name. It's like calm, like or peaceful, peace.
peace. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think in yoga they call Ananda is like a state that you're meant to reach, which is of bliss, it's a hedonic state of bliss, happiness, contentness, almost like nirvana. And so the word is derived from Sanskrit. So anandamide is often called our bliss molecule. And the reason why it was named that is because it's associated with bliss and happiness. And when we have high levels of anandamide, we feel very hedonic. We feel in a relaxed, calm state. All our worries dissipate. We feel blissful. So what happens is our anandamide is produced in response to the other side of the synapse, the neurotransmitters. It comes back, it binds the cannabinoid receptor. And this binding can control or change or alter what happens in the presynaptic neuron. And what we've done here is we've actually closed the circuit, and it allows for free flow from one side of the neuron to the other, from our neurotransmitters and our endocannabinoids. And this system really is all about maintaining balance and integrity. So anandamide has three messages really that it transmits. It's a messenger molecule, and it comes back to tell that original neuron one of three things. Either you're giving me the exact amount that I need to be coping and dealing with the stresses that we're being subjected to, or you're overproducing, or you're underproducing. So it allows that neuron to then start to adapt. We call it adaptogenic system because it's all about bringing balance and regulation back. And like I said, it has the ability to control a lot of other systems. So by closing the synapse and by allowing adequate feedback from anandamide, we can really start to fine-tune our bodily systems to external stressors. And you can see this in the endocrine system. You can see that hormonal levels are more responsive and receptive. Neurotransmitter production is more receptive. Our immune system becomes more receptive, and we can fire it up at the right time and turn it off at the right time. So think of the ECS as basically being like a thermostat. And this thermostat, you want to set it to the level that allows you to function at your optimum. It will find that level, and then it will maintain at that level. So when your body starts peaking and it's like with a heater, it starts getting, you set it to 30 degrees and it starts getting to 31, it switches off, comes back down to 29, switches on. And the better that we can tune our endocannabinoid system, the quicker and easier we can find that balance, and the more resilient we can become to the external environment. What are the ways in which we can alter this system? And there's two, really. There's a direct method where we go straight to the receptor and we bind that receptor, either a CB1 or a CB2. So we call these agonists or molecules that will mimic anandamide and bind hold of the anandamide receptor. And the second way is basically entourage. And entourage the entourage effect is where we tweak the system using alternative methods to improve the production, the function, the sensitivity, and reduce the breakdown of natural anandamide. So direct and indirect. If we look at direct cannabinoids, plant-based cannabinoids, you don't have to go far to find a few. So firstly, THC that you mentioned at the start is from cannabis. THC is a CB1 agonist. It directly binds the cannabinoid receptor. We call these cannabimimetics. Is a good mouthful for you. Cannabimimetics, basically meaning they mimic human cannabinoids and they bind cannabinoid receptors. The second one here, you know more about this than I do, but Salvia divinorum is the plant. Can you tell us about Salvinorum?
Personally, I haven't really tried it, but I've heard people do it, and it's almost like a time warp where you think you're like tripping for 10 minutes, but it feels like days have gone by. So yeah, it's like days, as in you've been actually doing work like in those days, like from morning to evening. So it's that kind of time warp. Like you actually remember activities during that time, and Yeah, so that's it's an interesting plant. Yeah.
Plant. It actually comes from the I think they're Mayan or Aztec cultures. Often, the more common name I think is Mexican tripping weed, is what people call it. But salvinorin A is one of the key psychoactive components of it, and it's a really potent CB1 agonist. Um, but it's interesting that it can alter your nervous system so drastically that you get time dilation effects happening.
Yeah.
Um, spiritually, it's been used for spiritual practice and enhancement for years, for thousands of years, by the people from those parts. Another one that's interesting comes from kava kava, which we see a lot of here in New Zealand because it's a traditional Fijian drink, used again in ceremony and for spiritual purposes. And The one from kava is called yangonin, and this is again a cannabinoid, plant-based cannabinoid that directly binds the cannabinoid receptor. It gives you a sensation of slight sedation. It's an analgesic, so it removes pain. Can be used for people with chronic pain. Can also be used, to assist with dealing with pain and with sleep and insomnia. But unlike the other two agonists, the yangonin does not have psychoactive effects. Can make you feel a bit drowsy, but it doesn't create any psychoactivity, from my understanding. Do you know much more about kava?
Kava a little bit. I haven't had too much of it to feel psychoactive, but definitely it is anesthetic. In it numbs. It is analgesic for sure.
Yeah. So I found one here from New Zealand. It grows in New Zealand, liverwort. The name it's another tongue twister. Perottetine. Perottetine, I think that's the way it's pronounced, is another plant molecule that works as a CB1 agonist, and apparently it has slight hallucinogenic effects as well. But all you have to do is go into the bush in New Zealand, you see liverwort growing everywhere. So I haven't been able to find out much information about this other than it was discovered to contain this cannabinoid, this potent cannabinoid. But whether it has any traditional indigenous use, that would be really interesting to find out. So if anyone knows anything about that, please contact us, because I'm always interested in the spiritual side of these plants, not just the biochemical side. So basically, cannabimemetics will mimic anandamide and bind the anandamide receptor in preference to anandamide itself. And this is how we can tweak and our endocannabinoid system. The indirect method, which is where we basically go for enhancing natural function of our own anandamide. And there are, many different plants. A lot more plants do this than direct activity. So, for example, from cannabis, again, the other main cannabinoid in cannabis, CBD or cannabidiol, is more of an indirect cannabinoid. So it works mainly through reuptake of anandamide. It slows down anandamide reuptake back into the cells, so it augments the natural levels of anandamide. One that we're really interested in is the second one here, maca. So maca is a medicinal root from the Andes of Peru. It grows only around 4,000 meters above sea level. And the people that use maca, they call the food of the brain, which is really interesting. So they understood that there was some activity happening in the brain. And what they would do with this root is they would harvest it, and then they would lay it out under the sun for 3 to 4 months and allow it to dry using the different elements in their environment. And then they would boil that root to extract out what they call the medicine. And what we now know is that process of traditional sun drying was essential, because that during that time it creates these molecules called macamides. So what these people had worked out was that, it's related to the radish. And we grow a radish in the garden, we take it out the garden, we eat it fresh. But what they figured out is that if you take that fresh radish and you dry it under the sun for 3 months, and then you boil it in water, or you boil it and macerate it in water and alcohol, you get very, very different properties happening with that plant. And that's because it creates the Makamides post-harvest. So they were actually biochemists. They were manufacturing these molecules themselves. It's human-made from the plant. And it turns out that Makamides have an almost identical structure to anandamide, and they actually don't bind the cannabinoid receptors, but they block the breakdown of natural anandamides through inhibiting the key enzymes. So we call these FAAH inhibitors. But really interesting that we can now look at those ancient traditions and we can understand that there was, incredible knowledge of plants to be able to extract out those medicines and to be able to know how to use them. There's also different types of maca, different colors of maca with different profiles of Makamides. So there's about 19 of them have been characterized now. So it's not as simple as one size fits all. And, it's really more of an in-depth science and tradition to understand how to look at the symptoms that you're trying to treat and treat with the appropriate maca. Here's another one from Peru, cacao. So we've known that cacao gives us bliss and happiness and endorphins and builds serotonin and dopamine. But actually, they've also discovered a class of fatty acids called N-acetylethylamines. So these types of molecules work themselves as FAAH inhibitors. Initially, studies back in the 90s showed, or someone published a paper saying that cacao contained anandamide. But this has since been refuted by a lot of other researchers and said, well, we can't find it in any other cacao. But it turns out, I think what they were actually finding was these N-acetylethylamines, and there's different structures of these too, and they actually work through entourage more so than direct. So that idea that cacao contains anandamide has not been scientifically backed up since that first statement. So you still see it online in a lot of blogs. It's actually not true. Cacao contains molecules that enhance anandamide's natural function and protect anandamide. So it's an indirect cannabinoid more so than a direct one. And then there's terpenes. And do you want to do a brief intro over terpenes and we'll come back to them in more detail?
Yeah, so terpenes are the aromatic component which is found in every plant and herb. So for example, if you have ever smelled lavender oil and people use that smell, that aroma to calm themselves or relax. So it is the terpene linalool, which is actually what they're smelling, which is helping people relax or calm down from lavender oil. So that's essentially what terpenes are. But they, I think where you were going with the entourage is that they combine with also other parts of the plant to create a bigger effect.
One question I had about the entourage is, do they understand yet the full mechanism of how they work? Because I've seen studies where they've shown definite benefit for using a full spectrum over an isolate, but and I saw one other study, particularly with the one that comes from the peppercorn, that showed potential CB2 activity. But is there a consensus yet, or is it complex? Does it depend on the plant molecule, or do you know the answer to that one?
Well, so there's no definite consensus at this point. I guess how the terpene research has come about has also come about because of all this interest in cannabis and cannabis legalization. And as research has delved into cannabis, they've found out about CBD and THC, but they've also found about terpenes. But now they're finding more cannabinoids as well, like CBN and CBG, and then they're finding different synergies. But it's like you've got, it's come out from that research, but it's really complex in cannabis because you've got 100 cannabinoids, and then you've got like 20, 30 flavonoids, and then you've got 100 terpenes, and then you've got all these multiple combinations of these 100. So the probabilities, you have to go through a lot of research and detail to see how all these different cannabinoids and the permutations and combinations they can have with different terpenes or within themselves as well.
Hmm.
So it's just a little bit early to give a definite answer, but as I guess anything in science, like as people find things more new, the old moves away. So yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really the similar. I mean, looking at maca, which is what we specialize in, understanding that it's you have alkaloids in there too. You have your fatty acids, you have your macamides, you have some glucosinolates, you have your polyphenols, and the whole thing is this plant has been used as a whole plant or a whole extract for thousands of years. When they pull out a single macamide, you can buy samples of pure macamides, and they run them through the same trials. Yes, you can see the the IC50 readings and the inhibition readings and all of these things, and they can classify. And it's fantastic that we can do that because we can now start to use this as a tool to gauge this is the quality of our maca based on macamides. But when we run that single macamide against the whole plant form, we get nowhere near the same biological activity in a human body. So I'm a firm believer of using a plant in the way that it was created with the full spectrum of everything that it has, and then trying to create versions that enhance different aspects of that plant, whether it's through processing or through growth of that plant. And I mean, that's what we've tried to do with maca, is create harmonizing blends, calming blends, or uplifting blends. Create blends for men, for women, but understand the foundations, but not use the pharmaceutical approach of, hey, let's pull out this macamide, it's the most potent, and then run it as an isolate. Because I think when you do that, you lose a lot of the effectiveness. And terpenes, I think, are the perfect example where that component is so
Correct.
important.
Yeah.
And yeah. So in terms of cannabis, I mean, you said this before, but we have all these different cannabinoids. The last report I read was 130 cannabinoids.
Yeah.
And we talk about two of them. We talk about THC and now CBD. People now know what CBD is. But you mentioned CBG, CBN, THCA, THCV. All of them have different properties. CBD is the most researched along with THC. But when you look at these charts here, there's so many different cannabinoids doing so many different things. And it makes you think, well, what do we look for when we are looking for cannabis, and understanding that some cannabinoids are better for for pain. Some cannabinoids are better for insomnia or for sleep. Like, for example, CBN is a lot more sedative. So you want to try and get a strain with high doses of CBN if you're dealing with insomnia.
Correct.
But it's the last thing you want to be taking if you're a truck driver.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we look at these profiles, like you say, now if initially all the research was focused on isolate, so pure CBD extracted from the plant and then rediluted into an oil and then taken as a direct dose. But I still believe personally that we should be focusing more on particularly the full spectrum side of things, where we extract out everything in those trichomes.
And just another thing to support some of the stuff, Corin, is that like CBD. So there's documented research that you can have CBD, but if you have it with a little bit of THC, it allows it allows CBD itself to be more effective. And
Mm-hmm.
so some of that is being researched and documented, but then that's just a synergy between two cannabinoids. But once you add more, obviously there's more research to be done, but there's a possibility there'll be even more synergy.
Well, yeah, and an interesting study I read about how when we add CBD into the mix and we get a CBD THC ratio of around 80 to 20, we start to negate a lot of the negative effects of THC. And I'm going to talk about the negative side of THC coming up. But this is really interesting because for people that are scared to use THC, it gives gives us hope that we can have low doses of it, and if we combat it with high doses of CBD or other cannabinoids, we can actually find that the THC works far more effectively with less side effects. CBD is the most medicinal, in my opinion, the most medicinal part of cannabis. And there's no refuting that in terms of what it can do in the body. I mean, it acts as an antidepressant. It does this through binding the 5-HT1A receptor, the serotonin receptor. It activates vanillopoid receptors and can help with pain reception. So it's an analgesic. If you've got chronic arthritis or rheumatism, this is the kind of thing that you want. Also can reduce down levels of inflammation and calm the inflammatory cascade in the body. It works with the PPAR, so your peroxisome receptors, and these can be really beneficial for people with tumors, reducing down tumor sizes, etc. It has anti-anxiety effects, but one of the key ways in which it works is through preventing reuptake of anandamide. So anandamide is a localized molecule. It's made in this pocket. It works on the CB1 or CB2 receptor, and then it's taken back up in the cell and destroyed by an enzymatic process. What an CBD does is it slows that reuptake. So what we see as a result of this, we see entourage, we see enhancement of natural anandamide function, we see increased sensitivity towards anandamide, and it's really basically giving anandamide a bit of a helping hand to do its job more effectively. And I think that's one of the reasons why CBD is one of the most effective cannabinoids for this. What the downside to using a cannabimimetic like THC, for example, is if you're putting this in your system, it's an external plant-based cannabinoid that will bind that cannabinoid receptor. If you're doing it regularly, what you see is that receptors firstly starts to become desensitized to that plant cannabinoid. Particularly with THC, you start to see that desensitization happening. So people find that they need to continually either increase their dose to start getting the same effect that they were getting when they started on this, if they're using it regularly, or to take a break and then have to come back on it again. So off, on would be the alternative. And I liken this to a caffeine addict. They wake up in the morning, they're tired, they have their hit of coffee, they're on the go. They do this day after day after day, and before you know it, their body is so desensitized to caffeine that they need 3 shots of coffee to get the same effect. And if they don't have coffee, they get a headache. So I've seen this happen a lot with THC overuse, where people use it initially for anxiety and stress, and then find that they become reliant on it. And what happens is when they stop for a day or 2 days, is that the anxiety comes screaming back. And the reason for that is that when you desensitize your cannabinoid receptors, your natural anandamide production will slow. And so, because the body says, I don't need this anymore. This receptor does not need anandamide. It's getting constantly hit with THC. So we call this dependence on particularly with marijuana dependence. So marijuana is a strain of cannabis in which you have high levels of THC. And people that are using it for anxiety find that they become dependent on it if they're using it too often. So the issue with this is, it's hard to come off it, and you're reliant on it because you've desensitized and upset your natural anandamide production. And the best thing that we've seen for overcoming this is to use entourage to resensitize and rebalance that system. So to get maca in your system, to use cacao, to use terpenes, to use these kinds of plants that will resensitize and get anandamide production up and slowly wean yourself off the THC. And then if you're going to use it in the future, just use it more sporadically. So a few days on, a few days off. Always careful with the dose. Titration is key.
Okay, like Corin, the sensitivity. I was listening to a podcast recently about this point exactly, about sensitivity and what time does it take to desensitize your body to THC, and it was about 48 hours. So if you've had THC, you definitely need to wait at least 48 hours so that it comes down to a low level so that to restart. But it's a small cycle relatively compared to if you were to having a medicine like a pill, like
Like antidepressants, for example, that where we're talking, it can take 3, 4, 6 months even to slowly wean yourself off these types of medications.
yes.
It is a small cycle, but I would say for people that have really gone too hard on THC, if they and I've seen this from in a clinical perspective, it can be a 6 to 12 week process to get them off that THC back to balance. And I know that that's not too long in the grand scheme of things, but I think it's something that we really need to keep in mind is that THC has amazing effects. It's rapid. It can work quickly, particularly for pain and for anxiety and insomnia, but it needs to be titrated effectively, um, and it needs to be used with entourage. So like I said, when you put CBD in the mix and you get that ratio right, and you add in some marker for sensitization, and then you've got some, your terpenes or your full spectrum, then you're in a way better place to be using it than just going for a high dose of THC.
100%. The dosing is so important, and even microdosing is pretty good idea.
Yeah, I've seen some amazing studies about microdosing of full spectrum as well, where it's dosing every 1 to 2 hours, but you'd be doing, instead of doing 12 megs per day of a CBD standardized full spectrum, you're doing 10 lots of that. So you basically divide it by 10, and you're taking it in tiny doses, or 1 meg every couple of hours,
Yeah.
as opposed to that, and it seems to work more effectively. This was what I talked about cacao. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this back up about these molecules in cacao is because it depends on the way we eat cacao again. And this is what I love about when Western people find these beautiful plant medicines from in an indigenous culture, we just grab it and run. And we never ask questions. And we go, oh, this is going to be worth big money because look, it's great for hormones and libido and all these things that people want in our culture. And I talked about that with maca. Like, if we're not adequately sun drying it, it hasn't gone through those processes, it's almost devoid of macamides, and it's pointless to take it because you're pretty much eating starch, with some antioxidants, but it's pretty much just pure starch. And we tested brands of maca in New Zealand and showed that only 40% of them were therapeutic based on their macamide levels. So with cacao, the way it's traditionally been consumed is to take the pod, the bean, to either dry it under the sun or to ferment and sun dry, and then grind it into a paste and drink that paste with water in a ceremonial setting. So two things about that. Firstly, the same with maca, it's always been used with intention. And intention is a huge part of using any plant that works our cannabinoid system, because intention is really about you taking time out, shutting off the outside world, creating an intention of where you want this plant to work within your body, where you need it to heal, where you need it to go, connecting with this plant, understanding the journey of the plant to you and your journey to that plant and your crossroads of where you're at and why you're taking it. And also having respect for the journey and respect for the ancient cultures, and putting that intention into that plant, because then when you consume it, you'll be using it on a whole different level. And this is the way it's always been traditionally used. So it's not about just taking it for the sake of it, it's about creating that space. And with cacao, the big thing that we're missing is most people are consuming it in the powder form. And when we look at that, I mean, that's the Western way to do it, isn't it? But traditionally, it's always in the full bean or the full bean paste. And this is what ceremonial cacao is. It's basically full bean blocks of milled up, fermented dried beans. And the beauty of that is it contains all the fats, and all the fats have all these fatty acids that work on our cannabinoid system. So it's another example of why we need to follow the traditions and understand the plant before we use it. So, I mean, that's another advice I would give to anyone using an indigenous plant is please, get awareness around the traditional uses, go to a ceremony with using it, and use it in that traditional way, and your experience will be so different to just buying it from a supermarket and throwing it in a drink every day. So here is our special plant, maca, and this is just to show you guys about the macamides and the structure. So I've got the chemical structure of anandamide on the left, and I've got the structure of one of the generic macamides on the right, and you can see the structures are so similar. So when these macamides were discovered, they initially thought that they were going to mimic anandamide in the brain and be plant cannabinoids, but they are actually terrible at binding the cannabinoid receptor, and that's a good thing, because it means that they promote entourage and they can be used more long-term and sustainably. And also the way that they're used in Peru is daily, every single day. You would take your maca to get your macamides. So the way that macamides work is through this reuptake pathway I've got here in the red arrow on the left, reuptake of anandamide. And what they found is that it blocks that reuptake and breakdown through inhibiting the enzyme. So normally your anandamide would come into the reuptake pathway and then be broken down by FAAH, which is your fatty acid amide hydrolase enzyme. What we find is when we have macamides in there, preferentially take that macamide out of the system. So if we're looking at this mode of action of FAAH inhibition or anandamide reuptake, what we're doing with these molecules, with macamides, with N-acetyl ethanolamines, with CBD, with terpenes, is we're actually giving our anandamide a shield. So I think of it like a battle where your external stresses are coming in and trying to disrupt this beautiful harmony in your nervous system. And a key part of this winning this battle is to have your anandamide. He's your messenger. So he's going to run around telling the troops what to do, telling the people what to do, telling the body how to react. If you give him a shield, he's under fire constantly. He's going to survive longer. You're going to get better messaging, and you're going to be able to more adequately adapt to the situations around you and those stressors. And this is what we call the entourage effect. It's allowing protection of our natural processes to occur, far more sustainable as a treatment option, because you can use this every single day and you will not desensitize these systems. With maca, they take it from birth all the way through to death in Peru. And, these people live amazing long lives. They're the happiest, healthiest people you'll meet. So there's got to be something to this, that, in terms of the using a maca for cannabinoid regulation.
Corin, what is PEA?
PEA, palmitoyl ethanolamine, as well, which is it's another molecule I haven't talked about, but it's another fatty acid that's been shown to work in this. It's at the highest level that we would see in foods. It's actually an egg yolk, but there's companies now extracting this out, and they're using it as a natural product for entourage as well. But you can buy capsules of it. We've seen it available on the market in New Zealand, but it's one that's been researched a lot. They call it PEA, but it's another reason why you should eat your egg yolks in the morning. So this is what we're doing. We're taking anandamide fluctuations, we're interfering with the breakdown and reuptake, and we get a smoother curve, and it's a more resilient curve. So your anandamide is going to be stronger, which means that your bodily systems are going to be stronger. And I can honestly say, using maca regularly, I used maca to help come off antidepressants that I'd been on for years. I'd had issues with fatigue and chronic fatigue when I was younger. I felt within 12 weeks, I felt so much stronger, more resilient. I was able to come off all my tablets. I'd never been able to do that before. So for me, the antidepressant effects were incredible. The resilience and strength that I got from it was incredible. Just understand as well these different colors of maca, and we research maca at the University of Victoria here in Wellington. We're so interested in understanding these colors because we know that they have different properties. We know that red maca increases bone density, reduces prostate inflammation and size, reduces anxiety, and the other colors, they don't have that effect. We know that black maca improves memory and cognitive function. We know that it can help regenerate brain cells, and it's neuroprotective. And we know that it increases sperm function in men. But the thing is, we don't understand why. So we're currently investigating this using biochemical mapping and trying to isolate out and understand, is it even a cannabinoid response that promotes all of this? If it is, what are the cannabinoids that the entourage molecules that we need? Can we extract them out, and can we make more specific products? So it's a really interesting area of research that's kind of new, and also understanding as well that the different colors actually work for different symptoms of the body. So red is amazing for anxiety. If you've got anxiety or mood swings, you want more red maca. Whereas if you're feeling depression, you've got muscular tension, headaches, migraine, then you need to be using more black maca. So this is based off traditional use. If you want to learn about maca, just watch our free online maca masterclass, and it's so in depth to help you understand all of this. But like I said, different colors, different properties. Also, we have activated maca, which is heat-treated forms of the dry root. So it's really important, never eat raw maca. I'll say that again, never eat raw maca, because it's actually really bad for you to eat it raw. It's always been cooked and boiled, and maca maize are heat activated. So they actually need heat to become more active. So we only sell pre-cooked forms of it, because here everyone wants to put it in smoothies and things. Traditionally, it's always been boiled as a root. So we have our generic yellow, and then we do blends for men and women, which are more harmonizing for male hormones, like uplifting, energizing. The women's is great for hormonal balance. And then we do pure extracts of the red and black. So we concentrate it down and macerate it and make these 10-to-1 high dose concentrates, which are amazing for more short-term acute relief. So we'd say you're activating, you take daily. The ratios or the type depends on the condition you're trying to treat. And then the black ones you use more acutely. But the best way to find out what maca to use, go to our website, macaexperts.com, and just click on the condition you're trying to treat, and it will give you background detailed information about the traditional treatments, the treatment plan that we propose, and then the scientific evidence to back up and support that. So it's all scientifically referenced to all the studies as well. But this is the best resource that you can use for maca. Instead of asking, questions, this is the first place to go. And then if you have anything beyond that, contact us direct and we can help you.
So I'll just start with a brief introduction. I'm Arjun, one of the co-founders of Good Herb Soda.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be sharing a presentation around terpenes, just a little bit brief background around cannabis, and just talk about our drinks. And Corin, feel free to jump in anytime you'd like, any questions.
Yep.
And we'll just get right into it. So what we'll cover today is Cannabis 101, the entourage effect, terpenes in nature, how are they found, where are they found, and what is Good Herb Soda. So let's just begin. So what are the constituents of cannabis? And it is, I think what we have looked at it from a very simplistic point of view, that it is made of three components: cannabinoids, flavonoids, and terpenes. Now, cannabinoids is, there are more than 100 cannabinoids in the cannabis plant. The most popular are CBD and THC, which are popular because a lot of research has been done about them, and we know a lot more than we know other cannabinoids such as CBN, CBG, etc. So that's one of the components of cannabis. The other component of cannabis is flavonoids, which is responsible for the color and pigmentation of the plant, and they're also high in antioxidants. About 20 varieties have been found in cannabis. And the last component of cannabis is terpenes, which is really what our interest is and where we're currently at. So what terpenes are is effectively the smell and aroma found in most plants and herbs. And cannabis is no different. The only difference is in the number of terpenes in cannabis when compared to other plants and herbs, where there is just one or two dominant terpenes. But in cannabis, we have more than 100. So that's something of real interest for us. And while we are just at cannabis, I thought we'll probably also just discuss what is hemp.
Mhm.
And simplistically, again, it's just another classification of cannabis in which one of the cannabinoids, which is THC, has to be lower than 0.35% of the total plant. And if it is, it's classified as hemp. So that's by the Ministry of Health.
Yeah.
Right now. Yeah.
So hemp is basically a very low THC grade of cannabis, which is, from a cannabinoid perspective, it's beneficial because you're getting other cannabinoids like CBD and other components that are not psychoactive, but without those direct cannabimimetics. So you're not going to have desensitization of receptors, etc. What's interesting too as well about flavonoids, that when people talk about green tea being an antioxidant, this is where this is the same sort of analogy. Green tea is really high in flavonoids. So these are flavonoids are what we call polyphenols, and basically they're poly meaning many phenols. Phenols are chemicals that have the ability to scavenge for free radicals and oxidants in the body. So flavonoids have this, we look at the polyphenolic content of a plant, and cannabis has high levels of these. So it means it's a really great antioxidant as well. So it's such a super plant because, you've got your terpenes, that flavor chemicals that you're going to tell us all about today. You've also got all these beautiful antioxidants, and you've got your medicinal cannabinoids that work, to help with entourage and to help directly work our cannabinoid system and receptors too.
They are responsible for the smell and aroma in most plants, and they've been known to have therapeutic effect. One easy example I think most people would be able to relate to is lavender oil, because I think a lot of people have been using it and they understand that it helps relax or calm them when they use it. And it's the terpene linalool, which effectively acts as an anxiolytic, sedative, or analgesic when somebody inhales lavender oil. So that's just an example of what terpenes are. Cannabis obviously has not just linalool, but it has terpenes which is also found in mangoes, which is myrcene. It's got terpenes which is found in lemons and pines, limonene, pinene, but it has a lot more as well. And as we go through this presentation, we'll try to hit upon the major cannabis terpenes, their therapeutic effects, and what happens when we combine them with different cannabinoids, primarily CBD and THC. So you've got the cannabinoids, the terpenes, and flavonoids. Now, I guess what the entourage effect is saying is that all parts of the plant, if you were to consume them together, they're more effective than consuming just an isolate like CBD by itself. So, and the analogy which we give is about, if you were to look at a rock band, and you've got a bassist, you've got a lead singer, a drummer, and a guitarist, and the terpenes. So if you were to remove one component, the band would not be as good. So you want the whole band, not just one part of it.
Yeah. So you're saying, there's components that are leading this, it's like on a gig, you've got the rhythm going in the background, but if you lose the bass from the song, the song still plays, but it doesn't have that same kick, that same effect as you would have, without that bass player, is what you're saying.
Effectively, right? It's like because the other analogy which we also give is, think about your cannabis experience like an aeroplane, and your CBD and your THC will give you that intensity, and it will give you that thrust and velocity, but the direction where you want to go is given by the terpenes. So do you want to take all that intensity and go on a downward trend versus go on an uplifting trend, versus so you can guide your cannabis experience using terpenes.
Yeah, cool. I really like that analogy. So like we can, we've all been on an aeroplane. We know how that feels. Like when you're taking off, you got the thrust, you feel the plane lifting off, but that idea of where you're turning, where you're heading, whether it's externalizing or internalizing or reflection or uplifting, and like all of these key components you reckon are all determined by the different terpenes can guide that journey.
So at this point, the government allows only food products which come out from the hemp seed, and the hemp seed is doesn't contain any of the cannabinoids, the terpenes, or the flavonoids, but it contains omega fatty acids, which are also good for you. But the current restrictions of the government don't allow the whole hemp plant to be used, or oil to be made from a whole hemp plant, which would be a full spectrum or a broad spectrum hemp oil, which would be more therapeutic and would be more valuable. But it's just good to know that at this stage the hemp products are coming from the hemp seed.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully in the future we can have hemp products which allow for the entourage effect as well.
Yeah, but just worth noting that's in New Zealand. So our New Zealand legislation, like it's different.
Correct.
It's different overseas. Only allows for that. There are exceptions via prescription. You're able via prescription to use high CBD, extracts or infused oils. That are made or processed from the trichomes, which are the oil parts of the plant around the buds. And you can even import from overseas. So if I get a prescription here in New Zealand, I can buy a full spectrum product from USA or from Canada and get it imported using that prescription into New Zealand. So that's legal currently, but the restriction is it needs to be prescribed by a physician here in New Zealand in order for us to have access to that. And yeah, that's the limitation that we currently have.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and over the counter, we can only buy from the hemp seed.
Yeah.
But if we're going to a doctor, definitely we can get any medicine. We can get even THC, high THC, as long as it's approved. So we'll just go over the most common cannabis terpenes. We've taken we've covered these ones because most cannabis terpenes are dominant in one of these, but there are a lot more which we can get into. Or if somebody had questions about some other specific terpene, we can just email it to, or just get in touch with me. We'll at the end of the presentation we'll leave. I'll give you my email address and our website information if you needed to get in touch.
So you're going to take us through the top 6, yeah, the big 6 players of terpenes that work within cannabis.
Correct.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So we'll start with myrcene, and so I think what we'll try to go over each terpene from where we experience it in the mainstream, and then what are the common sources where we can find it, what are the therapeutic properties and how they affect with cannabis. So if I look at myrcene, one way to feel the effect of myrcene is when you've had too many hoppy beers. You feel a little groggy, a little sleepy. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with the alcohol content, but it also has to do with the myrcene present in the hops, because myrcene acts as a muscle relaxant, and also as a sedative, and as an anti-inflammatory. So if and it's
Interesting.
yeah, it's found in hops and mangoes and a lot of herbs and plants.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah,
I always think when I think of the hoppy kind of flavor, like a strong like IPA, with that really fruity mango hoppy smell.
yep.
But the question is, do you reckon that this could be one of the reasons why, having for some people that get really kind of sedate with after consuming a few IPAs or a few really hoppy beers, it could have a very different effect if they had an alcohol, like a straight alcohol or wine or something that didn't have like, is that kind of difference in how you feel can be attributed to this terpene?
Yeah, I think if we were to equate it to liquor, for example, and a hoppy beer, um, I think it's a great question, Corin. But what I feel intuitively is that if you were to have hard liquor, you would just, when you consume too much of it, you would black out. But it would be just an abrupt ending. Whereas if you're on a hoppy beer, and because of the myrcene, which is kind of acting as a sedative, it's sloping downward decline rather
Hmm.
than just
Yeah,
uh, an abrupt end to the night.
yeah, yeah. So a slow end of the night wind down kind of feeling.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing is, in the cannabis community, a lot of people would know or would have heard that, oh, smoke cannabis and have mangoes. What that does is, if you have a lot of that, it because of the myrcene, you get all couch locked, and that's something which a lot of people in the community would have experienced if they've had a lot of mangoes and cannabis, or cannabis strains which are really high in myrcene.
Yeah, but it could be something like end of the night if you want to go to bed, then and you're using your cannabis, like having I've heard of that, have it with mango and you sleep like a baby. Like it's like it puts you to sleep on another level.
Yeah,
Um, but do you reckon that's the activity of the terpene that kind of works in entourage with the cannabis to really take
yeah,
take you in that direction?
yeah. So that's what research points to. We have experienced the effect ourselves, and anybody who's drunk a lot of beer has experienced the same effect as well.
Yeah.
And we've got, like, our drinks have the unwind drinks specifically are dominant in myrcene as well.
Hmm.
But it's got a little bit other terpenes in it which counteract the myrcene, so you don't go super sleepy.
Yeah.
Uh, yep. So that's I guess that's one of the uh, uses, or with mangoes. But the other thing is, if you were to use CBD and THC with not super high doses of myrcene, but um, based on your personal body type, if you, a quantity which doesn't make you very sleepy, then combining myrcene with THC and CBD can help act as a neuroprotective agent.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
So brain protection. Cool.
yeah. So we'll get on to the next terpene, which is called limonene. So, so a mainstream understanding of limonene would be something. So it's think about, in the morning you're bursting open a citrus fruit,
Mhm.
and that smell and freshness you feel when you burst open a citrus, that euphoric lift, so that comes from limonene.
Okay.
And that's I think, again, that's a lot of people would have experienced that when from lemon peels or orange peels or any
Mhm.
citrus peels, and that smell which you get, which lifts you up. That is why a lot of even you would say, if you go down to supermarket aisle and you go down in the cleaning section, where you've got, cleaners and laundry detergents and room fresheners, etc., a lot of them use limonene because it
Mhm.
it provides that upliftment,
Yeah.
and so that is what limonene is.
It's
And yeah,
it's one of the reasons why I think in the morning I love a freshly squeezed orange juice,
yeah,
because it sort of wakes you up, makes you feel bright, alert. I mean, the vitamin C is good as well, but there's more to it than that. Like it doesn't, you can have other foods with that higher levels of vitamin C and it doesn't give you that morning kick start like a orange juice. And I think in our culture, like freshly squeezed juice is the morning wake up. Along, they coffee, of course, as well, but that idea of fresh juice with your breakfast, I think
yeah.
you really taste the limonene in it. You can smell it.
And grapefruit, right? Like a lot of limonene is in grapefruit as well.
Mhm.
So it is. You're right. The juice in the morning, it also acts as an antioxidant. It's
Yeah.
got high anti-immunity. It builds up your immunity, and yeah, it also acts as an anti-inflammatory. So it's limonene has got really good therapeutic properties, but it also, when you combine it with your cannabinoids, it helps reduce the munchies, which a lot of people
Really?
experience. When you,
Cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So,
So, so what would you say for people that often experience munchies when they're using cannabis? Like, is it better to just eat some citrus fruit, or like what is the best thing to do in that case to to save yourself from just chowing down?
yeah, like instead of a bag of Doritos or Cheetos, you probably want to uh, maybe just have a glass of water with lemon juice.
Yeah.
That should help. Or again, it's like I keep plugging in our drinks, but it's that like our InZone drink has a lot of limonene. Like it's
Mhm.
great if you need to use cannabis and don't want the munchies, uh, just sip on some of the InZone while at it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I haven't tried InZone for that use yet. So InZone is the uplifting beverage that you guys make, but you reckon that one has got a lot of limonene in it?
Yeah, it's got
Yeah.
limonene, it's got pinene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, there we go. There's something to experiment with. People, when right in the comments below the video, if you experiment with any of these things, these little tips like the mango before bed, like the end zone or the lemon for the munchies, just let us know if you've had any success because it'd be cool to track this.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be great, and we could even post it on, if on social media as
Mhm.
a possible use.
I think you need to do like handy tips and tricks.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
six tips and tricks for people who want to, because it's not just about enhancing your cannabis experience, but it's also about trying to overcome some of the negative things that we all know and associate with. Like and yeah. So it's something for your social media accounts to try, I think.
how I think about terpenes is like this whole dashboard of buttons and you can move those different buttons or dials in different directions and customize your experience how you want it to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's because cannabis is such a personal uh, uh, product. It's different for everybody. So
Yeah, yeah, and it's every experience is different in every, and based on your intention, where you're at, all of the stresses that the stresses that you've accumulated, all of these things can all play a part. So having better control over that is better than having less control. I think it only means that the experience is going to be more positive, and with all of this knowledge.
yeah, true, and that's why we were like, take control of your state with terpenes. So that's our,
Yeah,
but that's the first time I got to use that term actually.
yeah, cool.
All right, let's get on to the next terpene, which is called pinene.
Yeah.
So this now the mainstream application of pinene is actually comes from Japan, where a lot of people go for this thing called as forest bathing,
Mm-hmm.
and in Japan they call it as Shinrin Yoku, which effectively means going and breathing fresh air in the forests. But what they're doing is they're going in, and there are all these pine trees where there's the smell of the pines, which is this pinene terpene, which they're inhaling, and it goes into their bodies and it acts as a bronchodilator.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, a lot of oxygen goes through your body and in your brain, and that wakes you up, focuses you, makes you more alert. So
Yeah.
that's the idea behind, I guess, forest bathing, and also the use or the therapeutic use of pinene, because when you inhale pineal, it helps obviously as a bronchial dilator, but with all of that oxygen, you feel centered. It acts as an anxiolytic, and it also has anti-inflammatory properties.
So interestingly, when I think of pinene, I think of that feeling of going into on a cold morning, and you inhale that forest smell, and it feels like your lungs have just doubled in size.
Yeah.
Like suddenly that fresh forest air, and suddenly you feel like your lungs have just expanded, be it way beyond their normal capacity. And I think that's the thing that I always think about pinene when I think of that, because that bronchial dilation, that increased oxygen, that ability to center us, and bring us back and ground us. Yeah, really, really cool.
It's definitely, and I think a lot of people can relate to that early morning smell and breath, right? Like it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
The other thing which is really interesting with pinene also is, if somebody's really had a bad experience with cannabis and they're like, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. Like it's not for me, and that actually comes from having a bad experience or having too much of cannabis, and you have paranoia, anxiousness, and all of that can be offset uh, if you have some pinene.
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
so just in case you've had too much cannabis and you're feeling uh, palpitations or you're feeling paranoid, find a source of pinene and get that into your body.
So what one of your drinks has the highest pinene levels?
Well, actually, both of them have pinene in them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you'd recommend more the calming.
Yeah, it's because it's still not the pinene is not the dominant in either one, so
Okay.
it acts as a supporting actor to the dominant terpene.
Yeah, yeah. But other alternatives would be like you've got here rosemary, basil, chewing on some rosemary or basil, or infusing it, or
Yeah,
you know,
or some rosemary or basil tea would be good.
yeah,
Yeah.
or to trying to find some forest and
Yeah. Just
Sitting and inhaling some pine needles.
yeah, or only use cannabis in the forest.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next one is beta caryophyllene. So
Yeah.
this one is found in all the spices, and uh, like a lot of people from India can relate to beta caryophyllene. So can I.
Mhm.
And so it's found in black pepper, cloves, cinnamon, um, and these spices, all of their smells have therapeutic effects and properties. But the most interesting thing about them is that they attach, or this terpene particularly attaches to the CB2 receptors,
Mhm.
which you talked about in your presentation, Corin, about the endocannabinoid system and cannabis interacting with the CB1 and CB2 receptors.
Yeah.
Similarly, beta caryophyllene also interacts with the CB2 receptors, which are in the bigger organs of the body, like the guts and the kidneys, and
Mhm.
etc. etc. So
So it's what we'd call a partial agonist. It has ability to, bind some receptors, but not all receptors. And I think the good thing with, some macramides are like this too. For maca, they're CB2 agonists, but they don't interfere with the CB1 receptor. So they can be more potent and have power, but don't have that tachyphylactic ability, that ability to desensitize. Definitely not psychoactive either, which is the benefit of that, but offering a bit more potency.
yeah, and this is the thing about this is that there's a lot of research to be done, but in a lot of old cultures like India or China, um, s- if you were to have things which are high in beta caryophyllene, so if you had a tea of cloves, cinnamons, and
Mhm.
peppers, that helps with digestion and your gut. So that's also a good remedy. Like you wouldn't need a kombucha all the time,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you've
yeah.
got, so you've got that, so you've got that effect which is already happening. But other than that, it is also a calming and an anxiolytic. So it does, beta caryophyllene is a lot more than just a terpene, because
Mhm.
it works with actual receptors inside the body as well. And one of the cannabis strains which is really high in beta caryophyllene is the Girl Scout cookies, which if you were to open it and break up the nug, it'll give you this earthy, berryish, spicy notes.
Yeah, cool. So very good anti-inflammatory, good for nausea, good for the gut health as well.
Yeah. So then we move on to linalool, which we briefly talked about earlier. From it's present in lavender, and a lot of people who use lavender oil have experienced it. But the and I think the therapeutic properties, most people would recognize them as anxiolytic, calming, sedative, anti-inflammatory, but it's also got, and it helps with immunity regulation. So
Mhm.
so and basil, and that is why a lot of people also call basil holy basil,
Yeah,
because it provides all of these properties because of the terpenes in it. So uh, that's just the terpene part of it. But if you were to combine linalool with the cannabinoids like CBD or THCA, it can act as an anticonvulsant to prevent seizures. And this is where uh, this some of this research has already been documented. So I guess from this point on going forward, if companies or if organizations were to develop medical cannabis products
yeah,
which are specific uh, in prevention of seizures, seizures, etc., then linalool, adding or using linalool with it would be a good idea.
Hmm.
Uh,
Cool.
yeah, and it also helps uh, break down cannabinoids when they're digested by the body. So
Yeah,
so
so it helps with metabolism as well of cannabinoids. Yeah. It's interesting. We use lavender on our pillows for sleep.
yeah.
Is there? I mean, you've talked about that it has this because of the calming effect, but is there anything you know about improving your sleep patterns or your brain function through at night? Like, have you seen any research on that?
I haven't, but it'll be really good to find some research on that. But what I think um, it, how most people have been using uh, the lavender oil is to get them to sleep. So obviously it acts as a sedative, but it doesn't have to if you were to combine it with other uh, uh, um, so let's just say you take some of the lavender terpene, and then you add some pinene to it, and then you add some CBD to it. So you could still get that relaxing, calming feeling which you get from the lavender, but you could still be focused and alert because of the pinene. So the next one is called terpinolene, and this is found um, in tree barks, in nutmeg, in cumin, and it's a really strong smell. And I guess from the cannabis side, the most familiarity of terpinolene is in the strain called as Jack Hera, which was discovered by this guy at the bottom right, and that's him, Jack Herer. So he bred the strain high in terpinolene, which effectively acts as a stimulant when combined with THC. So this is like the coffee of cannabis,
Yeah.
right? And and uh, but it also has a lot of therapeutic properties. It's antifungal, it's antibacterial, also anti-inflammatory, but it also wakes you up. And if you need to be up and about doing some stuff, you want a little bit of terpinolene in your cannabis.
So you no longer need to try and combine Red Bull with THC. You can just increase your levels of tryptophan and
Well,
save your adrenals from burning out with all the caffeine and all of the stimulants in your drink. And so, is your in zone drink, has that got high levels of this or higher levels?
oh, it's got terpinolene. It's so this is like you just need a little bit of terpinolene should do the trick kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's and it's like uh and you're right, like it's like if you were to combine cannabis and something like Red Bull, it's not the right mix though, because it's not guiding the plant to do what it needs to. It's so
Mhm.
you've got the plant which might try to calm you down, and you've got the Red Bull which is trying to wake you up. So you're fighting it. But if you were to do just cannabis with high terpinolene, then it's the terpene which is guiding the plant to be more to give you the same feeling of what a Red Bull would do, without that clash between what Red Bull is trying to do versus what cannabis is trying to do.
Yeah. So we would, in this case, like we would use this terpene with in with cannabis, but add in some black maca and or black maca extracts, and that way you're getting all of that uplifting effect without putting your body into a sympathetic mode. You're keeping yourself parasympathetic, but energized at the same time.
what good of soda effectively is uh, a wellness tonic that contains terpenes taken from different plant sources, put together in the same form or same ratios as different cannabis strain. And the green one has terpenes which are pulled out from plants, but which replicate the terpenes in the OG Kush cannabis strain. And the blue one, which is the Unwind, has terpenes which replicate the Blue Dream cannabis strain. Now, the drinks are super healthy. There's no preservatives, no bad stuff, no added sugar. We use monk fruit, which acts as a sweetener, and it's suitable for all diets as well. So give it a go.
I really love this because it's not legal to use those parts of the plant here. So you've just gone around all of that by recreating the profile from natural sources. But in essence, what you're getting in a bottle is the terpene experience of that cannabis strain. And you can use it to further enhance that experience of cannabis if you like, or you can use it by itself. Or combine it with other entourage molecules, which, like, we do a lot of that. Like, we use your Unwind after a really long day. We put it, take a high dose red maca shot, which is the chill out form of extracted form of maca, and we dissolve it in a little bit of water, and then we pour in the Unwind and we drink it. Like, it froths up in this beautiful.
Yeah. I've actually seen that before, and it looks really cool. It looks like
it looks like beer, but it tastes delicious.
It looks like it got that big froth at the top. It looks beautiful.
And so as we're sipping away, I think with these drinks, it's really about savoring, trying to get it sublingual as well, trying to allow it to soak under the tongue, get sublingual absorption. But also, like you would with a wine, it's about getting the aroma in the olfactory system, allowing those oils, those smells, those flavors to permeate. So not just drinking it, but more kind of savoring it.
Exactly. You want it to be like 3 times. We think about it like when you're sipping it, you're smelling it. So that's the first way you experience the terpenes. Then you take it sublingually, which is the second way, and then you drink it, which is the third way. So and that allows the maximum amount of terpenes to be bioavailable in your body.
Yeah. But it definitely changes the experience when you do it that way, as opposed to just as a drink. The other thing I think is great that people should try is, that experience of going out to a social event. I've had so many times in my life where I've drunk beer and I felt groggy, I felt awful the next day. Like, it sometimes takes you out of a good space into a bad space. You feel sedate, drowsy. Like, for people that want to go to a social event and connect and be alert and alive, but then they don't, you want something to drink. You don't want to just turn up and stand there. So I used to do kombucha and things, but then I found like too much sugar, my teeth at the end of the night. Like, I felt and kombucha, it's not made to drink like 1 liter or 2 liters in a night. You get chronic diarrhea the next day, it's, so I really love the fact that there is something like this that you can take and you can really enjoy it in this experience. You can savor it, you can share it with your friends, and you can it's a connection tool, but it's also about enhancing your social experience too, and you're not going to feel like crap afterwards. If anything, it's going to enhance that. So from a social perspective, I love it. Like, it was a winner at festivals,
In fact, like, a lot of people also like mix it with alcohol. Like, it's pretty good in that sense, like if people want to have it with alcohol. It's a better mixer than, like, a sugary mixer, because it's healthier.
Well, I reckon if you're going to add it to alcohol, like, you can have it without if you don't drink alcohol. But if you're going to have it with a little bit of gin and tonic, and you're going to get this incredible enhancement. Like, the juniper in there is going to contain more of your flavor terpenes as well.
True, true. Well, that's awesome, Carl. Like I'm glad you've used it in so many ways. That's
Yeah. The other one that we do is we use our black marker shots. So the same shots with the end zone. Before we go surfing or before we do our run or our workout to kind
oh
of
yeah.
uplift. But we sell Entourage packs now where we're combining it on our website, and they're going really well. So where can people get this stuff?
So our website obviously is one place, but we're also stocked in other website like yours, Seleno Health website, because on your website they can get it combined with other products as well. And then we're on the Go Green website. We've got a lot of online stores where we're selling through, but then there's these health stores which we are in, like Naturally Healthy in Hamilton.
Yeah.
A few liquor stores as well.
But I think if people out there, like if you own a store or you're interested or you know someone, like it's such a cool product to have. So, hopefully this will build some awareness and we can get more stores and places having it available for people.
Yeah. In
so-
fact, we're right now at a pop-up at Oraki Bay Village. So
Yeah.
if anybody's keen to stop by,
Yeah.
we can get them samples and tasters, etc.
That's in Auckland. Cool. So what is it? www.goodherbsoda.com.
Yep, goodherbsoda.com is our website, and at goodherbsoda on our social media.
Cool. All right. Well, we've come to the end of the show, the webinar. So if you have any more questions, you can write in the comments below. Follow Good Herb Soda. Follow Seleno Health. We're Seleno.health on Instagram and at the Mucka Experts on Facebook. And if you have any questions, just write them in the comment box below, or get in touch through our websites. Send us some photos of your cannabis experience with the terpene infused sodas.
Yeah, and we'll put out a tips and tricks thing as well.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys again soon.